Yo, this is the dealer himself, I-20, chilling with my homeboy Mikey T, the movie star. You are now live on Report Card Radio.
I-20, man, I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me tonight on Report Card Radio for this exclusive interview, man.
Thank you, brother.
So, everyone knows you as an original member of the Disturbing the Peace. Where are you actually from, and how did you become associated with the label?
I'm from Decatur, Georgia, born and raised. I met Ludacris through a mutual friend. That would have been 98. I met a friend of mine who knew that I rhymed and knew that he rhymed, figured that we needed to meet each other and just put us on the phone. Back in the day when people used to talk on the phone three-way, she just put us on the phone one day for us to meet, and we just connected from there.
That's what's up, man. So, so you're from the deck, as you said. Tell me a little bit about Decatur, man, for someone who doesn't really know about it but has heard a lot about it from the likes of Gucci Mane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Zone 6. It's on the east side of Atlanta. To me, it's really reflective of Atlanta in the sense that there's one side of it that's going to be more urban, there's going to be more hood, but then they've gentrified a lot of it, like in the downtown area where it's more upscale. It's going to be coffee shops and so forth. But I mean, it's like any normal city in United States of America, in my opinion, and it's home for me.
So, how did you actually were speaking about how you met Ludacris, but taking me into it when you guys actually met, what was that like?
It was cool. I had never really met anybody who had the same passion for hip hop like he did, at least at that time. So it was really cool to meet somebody who was really into the lyricism aspect, knew a lot about the artists that they liked, knew a lot about their mission or their desire to contribute to hip hop. So we had a lot of good conversations, a lot of good freestyle sessions.
Okay, so you so what was it like back in 1999, back in 1998 when you two were hustling in Atlanta on the indie tip?
That came a little bit later. At first, I was in a different group, and he and I were just cool, and we had a mutual respect for each other as rappers. But the group that I was in, most of the members that were in it were really, really involved kind of in the streets, and they kind of got caught up in a lot of different ways, and the group just kind of dissipated. And Luda really snatched me up. He really saw that I was really invested in the idea of furthering my career. And it started the same way as anybody else. Me, him, and Fate were trying to get deals. We were recording demos, but we just couldn't get anybody to pick us up. So what we ended up doing after we couldn't really get anybody to give us a deal was to just decide that we were going to put an album out individually, just put it out ourselves. And the mentality was simply, if we can get our money back, we can put more into demos. We never had it in our mind for it to be a huge success. We just wanted to kind of make our money back to keep putting demos out to get signed. And then it ultimately did really, really well. It sold 50,000 copies. And it went from trying to get a deal to deciding what deal we wanted.
So are you talking about the fact that you were featured on Ludacris's first two albums?
Yeah, I've been on almost only two albums I ain't been on. Chris's is like two. I only haven't been on two albums, but yeah, I was on the very first one, the Back for the First Time, where the album cover is just a picture that a guy drew when he went on vacation in Cuba with his mother. So yeah, I've been with him for a long time.
So tell me about Luda, snatching you up, as you said, and then putting you on those two albums.
Yeah, it was that was kind of my official getting in Disturbing the Peace. He was looking to kind of build a roster. He always had a vision to kind of have more than just himself be represented. And that's one of the things that really drew me to him, is that he had such a good sense of business and a good sense of direction. And so when we started recording the album, he really wanted to have other artists featured on it. So that's why me and Fate are, all over that first album.
So if anybody wants to look it up, those records are actually First and 10 as well as Catch Up.
Yeah, but those are also on his debut album from Def Jam. We just recycled a lot of those records, to be honest with you.
Yeah, any memory of why that was done? I mean, I've heard a couple other stories like that back in those years of labels using mixed or mixtape like tracks and actually putting them on the official release.
I think that Def Jam just was like, this is already a smash. Why mess with it? What you really need is a bigger vehicle, not to reinvent the wheel. So that's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah, true. 20. You know, you said that you went on to appear on a number of Ludacris's albums after being on those first two. So what was it that made you and Luda's relationship so strong?
A mutual respect, just a mutual respect for each other's talents and each other's artistry. And when we were, Chris and Faith lived together for like 3 or 4 years. So we really built a good bond and really built a good dynamic and a good creative space amongst the three of us during that time, really laying the groundwork for what Disturbing the Peace would be.
So before we get into how, you know, Disturbing the Peace expanded and went over to Def Jam, I want to speak about when Ludacris added Shauna to the mix. What do you most remember about that?
He didn't. Shaka did. Shaka is, one of the COOs of Disturbing the Peace. He had heard of her. We had all heard of her. She was in a group called Infamous Syndicate that actually had come out, I think, in the mid to late 90s. And Shaka just felt like she was a talented artist who didn't get her due. And he was looking to find a vehicle for her. And he thought to put her as almost like an answer on What's Your Fantasy. And that's when we shot the video for What's Your Fantasy, that was the first time we all met her. We had never met her before that.
Could you take me into that, man, when you guys first met Shauna and how she started working out with y'all?
Yeah, it was instant chemistry. From the time that we got on the video set and we got to link up with her and we got to talk with her and saw how passionate she was about music and how passionate she was about being a good MC. It was instant chemistry. She was meant to be in the clip.
From there, I want to take it to Ludacris actually bringing everything over to Def Jam. Tell me about Luda taking everyone over to Def Jam.
Yeah, so Def Jam is looking to expound and essentially get territorial, have a whole Def Jam West Coast, Def Jam South. So they hired Scarface to be the president of Def Jam South. We had attempted to get signed to Rap-A-Lot a few years before when we did that song, Catch Up, and it was on a compilation that Jay Prince put out. Once Scarface got that connection, we reconnected with him. He referenced us as a good group to kind of be the flagship group. And Def Jam South ended up being, the first acts ended up being Ludacris, Disturbing the Peace, and Young Jeezy. And we ended up doing so well that they didn't sign anybody else. So Def Jam South just ended up being Disturbing the Peace.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, man. A lot of people, there was a lot of discussion right there. Is it Def Jam South? No, it's Disturbing the Peace. So 20, can you tell me, you know, going from what Disturbing the Peace was to them becoming a part of Def Jam, what did that do for that indie label?
A lot, money rules, and being able to have money behind you instead of taking money out your pocket, spending the money that you have, trying to do whatever it is you can. We were able to have marketing. We were able to touch a lot more markets. We were able to go on the road. We were able to shoot videos. We were just able to extend our reach. See, keep in mind, this is 2001. So people aren't using YouTube. And, now you don't even really need a label. You can record something in the house and get 1 million streams just posting it online. But at this time, you really had to do the footwork. You really had to get out to radio stations. You really had to, it was difficult to kind of transition past your territory. And Def Jam South allowed us to be connected in cities where we were not going to be able to simply just drive up there and hand our CD out. And that's what Def Jam South really allowed us to do, is really get us the type of exposure to get more eyes and more ears on what it is we were doing.
So you had mentioned Shaka. Was he very instrumental in the foundation of Disturbing the Peace, of it growing to a corporation?
Definitely. He was our manager. He was our first manager. He had been with us since the 90s. He worked at the radio station, just like Luda worked at the radio station, and had always been helpful, helped us record our demos, helped us give us directions for demos, helped shop our demos. So he's always been there.
So your record, First and 10 with Luda, was actually placed on his major label debut, back for the first time. You were still labeled as Infamous 2.0 at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When did you decide to do the name change? Excuse me.
Yeah, that's a good question. Infamous 2.0. My nickname is 20. That's been a nickname of mine since I was young, and I got that nickname because of my voice as a joke about sounding older than I actually am. And so Infamous 2.0, when I first started really getting into MCing, that was kind of the thing, was to have your name and then like a distinction before your name, the Notorious B.I.G. Like that was like the thing at that time. And so I was the Infamous 2.0. But as we started putting more and more music out and started getting more and more notoriety and starting to get more and more noticed, I really noticed that Atlanta was making a lot of noise for itself. People were really paying attention to Atlanta, really listening to Atlanta music, but everybody was from the South Side or from the West Side. Everybody was from College Park. Everybody was from Bankhead. I wasn't from any of those places. I was from Decatur on the East Side. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of artists who had at least big commercial success from the East Side. And so I changed it to I-20 to represent the I-20 East Highway that runs through Decatur, Georgia.
When did you actually figure out from there that you were going to be getting your own album?
It was just one of those type of things where it was always talked about me or Shauna being next. We were just who the labels were gravitating towards when we, as Luda started becoming more and more popular and people started to hear more and more of his songs and started to really start to do a deep dive into his label. That's just how it worked out, that people were showing the most interest in me and Shauna. And so I knew at that time I would have a debut, but I always figured I would have a debut album.
Censorship became a thing, I think, in your career, because I'm listening to Move. I'm listening to Move, and you get pretty violent on that track as well. So Censorship became a thing on a couple of the skits and on Word of Mouth, right? A couple of the skits actually got removed from the, you know what I mean, from the edited version.
Yeah. All the skits on all of Luda albums are written by me and him. And we always just try to poke fun of the industry, not necessarily in a mean or nefarious way, but we just kind of try to make light of how serious rappers take themselves, how serious labels take this. And we would always just try to make a spin. We didn't know upon the release of his albums how many people would hear these and be like, funny, but that's really offensive, or funny, but that's kind of far. And so when Luda started having albums being released in the edited version, I was shocked at how many things were getting removed.
You know, back then the skits were known for either being really gangster, being sexual, or like, you know, Ludacris was a comedy, almost like a comedy rapper in a sense, to where you would have the big head or the big arms, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you expect a little comedy from him. So 20, tell me about getting that call though to be on one of the singles from the third album, Word of Mouth, Move.
So that was the way that all worked out is why I believe in fate. Luda and Fate had just recorded. She said she never done it, and they went to the dungeon. And we're all from Atlanta, and so to go to the dungeon where Outkast records is like the holy grail. You know what I mean? And record a song produced by Organized Noise is as big as it gets. So when they did it, I was damn near jealous because I was like, damn, I would have loved to go. I would have loved to be on that song. But Shaka kept saying, I got another record in mind for you. He just kept saying that. And he was like, it's produced by KLC. KLC is a producer who did almost everything for No Limit when Master P was getting big. And they let me hear the record beforehand. And I was afraid to get on it initially because Luda and Mystical are both so animated and they're both so, demonstrative in what it is they do. And that's not really what I do. So when I first heard the record and heard how energetic they were and, animated they were, I was kind of like, I'm not going to fit on this. This isn't what I do. But to Shaka's credit, he was like, don't do what they do. Do what you do. And it'll come together. And so I wrote my verse real quick laid it. I would have never thought that the song would have been so big or my verse would be so popular, considering there were two big heavyweights on that song.
Yeah, facts, man. You know, people let that record play the whole way through.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a blessing.
So in 2004, you dropped your solo album.
Yeah.
Self-explanatory. Let's talk about, what do you most remember from your solo debut album, man?
The fun that I had being in control and being able to record my solo album and being able to work with some of the producers I work with. But the thing I remember the most is how many people I had to prove wrong to get to work on the album. I was told by my A&R that Salam Remy, who is pretty much the executive producer for Lauryn Hill and Nas, who doesn't really work with anybody, was not going to work with me. And he did like 4 songs on the album. And then I was told that the Heatmakers, Arsonists, and the Heatmakers only did beats for Dipset, and he did 2 on my album. So I had to just keep proving to people that I was the type of artist that you should want to work with. And I just had a lot of fun recording that album and getting a lot of people who people said wouldn't want to work with me or wouldn't want to be on the album to collectively get together and create it.
So what would you say was it that led to the album's release? Was it the mega success of Move Bitch? Was it that what started to get your voice out there a lot more?
Definitely. Move Bitch being as big as it was, and then not just as big as it was, it lasted. You know, a lot of people have hit records and they're a hit record for a month, or it's a hit record for 2 months, and then it's gone. But Move, I mean, you could still put that record on today, and it's going to get a lot of people, you know, jumping up and dancing and so forth. And so the longevity of the record, pardon me, and the impact of the record, but not just that, people who were involved with our label knew how much I was doing behind the scenes with Luda and how much music we were doing collectively as Disturbing the Peace, the conglomerate, and how involved I was in that.
No, 20, I was going to say earlier in the conversation when you were speaking on, you know, like somebody blowing up overnight nowadays, like how it is in the record business now, how easy it is. Putting a record out like Move Bitch, this day and age, it would go. You know what I mean? It'd sell 1 million copies. It'd create a 1,000 different viral moments. You know what I'm saying?
Completely.
So you were touching on it, man. In 2004, you actually had some of the dopest producers on your album. You had the Heatmakers, Arsonists starting it off. You had Little John on your album. You actually had 3 6 Mafia. You had the GUnit. You had the GUnit producing partner Red Spider.
Yeah.
How did you arrange so much dope production on the album?
Man, I told that my A&R was Rich Knight. Shout out to him. I had already had a vision of what I wanted the album to sound like. But like I told you, Rich just wasn't sure that those artists would want to work with me because at this point, they only knew me from Move. But I always felt like if I could just talk to them, I know how to sell myself. So like, for instance, with the Heatmakers, I came out to New York and I just asked Rich to just set up a studio session with the Heatmakers, and Arsonist came in. He played a couple of beats and the beats were cool. But once I got to talk to him and we just sat down and we talked and we vibed and we spoke and we didn't play beats, we just kind of spoke and conversed. Then he just started making beats up on the spot for me and I started, you know, recording. And I flew out to Miami and I was out in Miami with Salam for like 2 weeks. And again, me and Salam spent the first like week not making any music, just getting to know each other, just talking, asking each other's views on politics and life. And once Salam was like, I like your energy, I like you as a person, it became so much easier to have a cohesive and kind of symbiotic relationship. So with almost all of those people, I was able to earn their respect through conversation, whether we got on the phone and had to spit a verse for them, or whether I went and met up with them, we sat down and we talked. I was able to really lay the groundwork for a good friendship, and then that made them want to work with me creatively.
So then we move into Break Bread. Mm-hmm. So this record dropped with a recognizable Ludacris hook, and you guys actually added Bone Crusher to the joint.
Luda called me in the middle of the night to say, I got this beat from Lil Jon. Lil Jon wanted to make a beat for you. I've already put a hook to it, hurry and get over here. And I went over there the next day, and him and Lil Jon played me the beat and played me the hook. I wrote the verses in like 20 minutes. Why Lil Jon is not on the version that came out instead of Bone Crushers, because at the time, Lil Jon was suing us. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but he wasn't suing us because we were in conflict. The label suggested that he sued us because Move Bitch is something that he had used on a song a long time ago that we didn't know, because it's actually just a random saying that people would say in the club as they were walking around the club or walking around the dance floor. And so his label suggested that he sue us for the song. And so because there was a lawsuit going on, he couldn't actually be involved in the vocals, even though he's in the video and is a good friend.
So what did you think about Bone Crusher coming in and replacing him? He was hot, never scared.
Yeah, it happened. Like, love Bone Crusher. Good dude, good person. So I was cool. I didn't feel like it took away from the record in any way. So I was happy.
Yeah, man. You know, like I was saying, based on all of what I'm saying here, is like the label put a lot of effort into your album. How do you feel like the push was behind the album?
That's harder to say, because when it was time for my album to drop is when Chingy decided he wanted to leave Disturbing the Peace. And he and I both went to Capital Priority together because they were looking to sign more than one act from Disturbing the Peace. And so Disturbing the Peace and Capital were deadlocked. They weren't even speaking when my album dropped. They weren't even on speaking terms. So I can't say that the album got the type of push that it should have gotten, because my home label and the label that was distributing me was at war at the time.
So that was actually my next question. It was about the album actually coming out under Disturbing the Peace / Capital. What led you to actually taking another deal other than Def Jam? Why was it not Def Jam Disturbing the Peace?
It was really important to Disturbing the Peace to have us spread out everywhere. They feared the idea of all artists being on Def Jam, because their mentality was, if there's ever a fracture in a Def Jam relationship, this then has a residual effect on all of the artists that we signed. They were looking at it like, I want an artist on everybody's label. I wanted Disturbing the Peace as the clique, but I want my artists spread over everywhere. So they were trying to get us all deals everywhere, and then have us have group deals everywhere and solo deals everywhere. So it was really important. And we were following the Wu-Tang model of having a one deal collectively as a clique, but then Ghostface was like on Epic, but Method Man was on Def Jam. And you know, so we kind of were following that model of spreading the money around.
So could you take me into Capitol Records courting you a little bit and how that situation came about? You said that they had you and Chingy in their sights.
Well, my heart and mind was set on Elektra at the time, and because I really liked Fabulous and I liked what they were doing with him, and he was on Elektra at the time. But Shaka was like, Capitol was the most interested in doing something collectively with Disturbing the Peace, and he was always looking for distribution where he felt like he could go in and really cement our label and really bring other artists in and have say and leverage in where he went. And so when they were saying, hey, we'll take more than one artist, he felt like it made the most sense to say, cool, that means we can get 2 artists over here and maybe 2 artists over there. And so that was how it kind of ended up that I went ahead and went with Capitol.
No, Elektra was definitely dope as well. You know, they released a Old Dirty Bastard album, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, yeah. Man, but I can honestly see, you know, why you guys would all run like that, because if you look at a situation like GUnit and Interscope, it just seemed like with all the acts that 50 was signing, Interscope became too bloated to actually release all of those projects.
I can't speak to that, but I definitely know that was a fear of ours, that we were like, there's no way everyone's going to be able to get the same amount of attention. And also, Shaka didn't like the idea that maybe we would be competing with our own roster for release dates. And photo shoots, video shoots, whatever the case may be. So it was really important to him to kind of spread us around.
That's a good note, man. Did you ever get a chance to meet 50 Cent or any of the GUnit guys?
Yeah, man, we toured with 50 and GUnit, and Young Buck was on the Blood and Water album that was supposed to come out. We were very, very connected to them because Shaka used to manage 50. And as a matter of fact, me and Chris went to 50's album release party for Power of a Dollar. This was before he got shot. And so we've always been very, very connected with GUnit. Very, very connected. We've done a tour with them, and then a tour with them that was through Eminem when we went on Eminem's anger management tour.
All right, so let's tap into that Power of the Dollar release party. Can you tell me about that? Did you all go out to Queens for that?
No, it was here in Atlanta, the club called Chili Pepper. And I just remember that it was a decent crowd, but definitely not like what he would be 3 or 4 years later. And Shaka was very, very invested in 50. And, he was just like, your time is going to come. Just be patient, be understanding that this game works in waves. And he took off maybe like 3 years later.
That's dope, man. That's dope that you could share that. So later on, you actually went on to actually sharing the stage, touring the same cities with him. You said on the Eminem produced tour, I would imagine that was the anger management tour?
Yeah, the anger management tour. We were on the anger management tour with Eminem and 50 Cent, and it was fantastic. It was incredible. And so, yeah, we know 50 really well.
Is that where you got the opportunity to build with Buck for, I believe it was going to be, your second album, a feature on your second album?
That's definitely where me and Buck got really close and really cool, was on that tour. And that's how we ended up on a song that was going to be on my second album. We really built through there. We had met before at 2 Chainz Hotel. We met there before, but that was just like, what's up, how you, whatever. But we really, really built our friendship on that tour.
How were you able to record with Buck? I know that GUnit had a recording studio on their tour bus. Was it something more formal or just like an email?
It was just an email. We were good friends, talking on the phone. Salam had made a beat, and I told Buck I could hear a minute. I rapped my verse to him literally on the phone, played him the beat first over the phone, then sent it to him. And he did it at his house. I recorded it in my house.
So I want to tap into the history that we were just talking about. Let's talk about Chingys history with DTP. Do you remember how he was initially brought into the label?
So that's a crazy story. We were up at the Disturbing the Peace office, and there were all these records that said Chingy on them. We thought it was a female R&B singer. We didn't know he was a rapper. Apparently what happened, according to Shaka, is Shaka was in St. Louis for something else. And Chingy had won a contest where like they let artists play a song, and the audience either says this is a good song or this is a bad song. And the song was right there. And Shaka thought that it was a really big smash. And he ended up meeting up with him there and signing him. So he was already signed by the time we met him. We met him after the ink was already dry on Disturbing the Peace.
So what did you think about Chingy being added to, DTP right off the jump?
I think he fit well with what they were doing, what their vision was, and because I think he lined up really well with Luda's market.
What do you think it was that made Chingy ultimately leave Disturbing the Peace?
Financial reasons. He felt that he was being unfairly compensated.
Right, over the single Right There.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially. Maybe other stuff, because he had a lot of singles, you know what I mean? It was just dope to see somebody actually taken off from the Disturbing the Peace label and then just so abruptly leave. And then, as we all know, he ended up coming back.
He did.
How was there any tension there when he came back, or was it smooth?
Not for me, because I was indifferent. I always looked at the label as that me, Chris, Fate, 2 Chainz, Shauna, and Dollar were friends. And people was going to come and go as artists. And so artists were going to make artist decisions. So it was nothing for me to take personally.
How was it getting into the studio with Ludacris in general, man?
See, a lot of people ask me that, but it wasn't. I don't know how to answer that because I always been recording him. I've been recording him since I was 18. So it felt like how it's always felt because we've been friends long before anything. So we've always recorded together. So it felt like how it normally feels when we record. I think maybe that question would be better to ask me if like I met him and signed to the label and then I was trying to work with him. But I've been rapping with Ludacris since we were 18 years old.
Who was the person that came into the studio to work with Ludacris that make you said, damn, like who gave you that oh my God moment? Who in the history came into the studio to work with Ludacris that wowed you?
What a good question. Pharrell? I guess maybe Pharrell on Throw Them Bowls. And then he came back and me and Luda was on his album Clones. And he asked Luda, could I be on the song with him for his album Clones? And I think that was probably the big deal. Almost everybody else, we've always known in some way. So it would be hard for me to be starstruck because when you sign to Def Jam, there's so many people that you meet because they're just indirectly connected to the label. So I guess Pharrell would probably be my answer.
I hear that, man. I wanted to ask because I could only imagine the phone calls that Ludacris has gotten from celebrities all over the world that have just wanted to hear his voice or talk to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I can't speak to that. I guess the craziest thing that I can say is one time I called him to play him something, and he told me that he was at dinner with Jeremy Piven and Morgan Freeman. I think that's the craziest thing that I was like, what?
Yep, exactly. A moment like that. You know what I mean? So let's speak on 2 Chainz. Let's speak on 2 Chainz or Titty Boy. How is it working with a pre-famed 2 Chainz at this point known as Titty Boy?
Again, it was a lot like Chris. We always been friends with 2 Chainz, always. And so we always been recording together. I first met him 98, 99 too. And so we always been cool, always been making music, always just been knocking around, freestyling, whatever the case may be. So he's still tit to me to this day. You know, he's the same dude.
How did he initially get brought into the label? Was it because of his eccentric flow? Was it a friendship with Luda?
Fate. He's Fate's friend. Him and Fate from the same projects in College Park. And Fate was the one who was like, I got a guy. And then me and Fate introduced me to him first because we used to go over a guy named Juk House who was a producer in College Park. And Juk used to have a place that was kind of like the dungeon. He had a place like that where it was his parents' house, and he had a basement where he had a little mini recording studio, and everybody would just go over there and battle and freestyle and so forth like that. And so Fate first introduced me to 2 Chainz over there, and we became really cool and really close from there. And then Fate kept telling Chris, like, hey, this dude, I'm telling you, this guy, he's good. And once we let Chris hear some of his stuff with Dollar, we were connected, but he been with us. It's just a lot of people that realize how long he been with us. He's in the What's Your Fantasy video. It's just people don't pay attention until you jump off.
I want to ask you a little bit about the situation with T.I. and Ludacris. When Ludacris released his album Theater of the Mind, he actually had a record with T.I. How did the two go on to clear up all their issues in 2008? Do you have any idea about that?
All I heard was that Drama called them together and they had dinner. That's the extent of it. You know, it never went, conversation about it never went deeper than that. The Drama, T.I., Chris, and Shaka had dinner. And it was cool after that.
That's dope. So they came together. They actually recorded on Theater of the Mind. You know, at this point, where were you in 2008?
Working on Blowing the Water.
Did you ever get a chance to meet T.I. like early on back in like 2001 when you had first started working with Ludacris? I mean, he was grinding the album I'm Serious at that point.
Of course. We all from Atlanta. Atlanta ain't so big. So, yeah, a bunch of times. A million times, yeah.
What was T.I. like back then, man, before he became this ultra superstar having singles with Rihanna?
I don't really know him. You know what I'm saying? cool. You know what I mean? Just in passing or whatever. We were always in our own world, just like I'm sure he was always in his own world or what have you. The friction was the most we interacted.
The what?
The conflict was the most we ever really interacted.
Were you aware of, were there really issues going on with T.I. and Luda, or was it really more of a record thing? Because I know that they had T.I. removed from Buck's album because of that friction.
It started with me and him. So yeah, of course I know about it. It just spilled over to him and Chris, but it started with me and him.
It started with you and T.I.? Could you explain that to me?
Man, it's old. I don't really want to bring up old stuff and reignite old stuff, but it's just,
I feel you, bro.
yeah, it's just me. It started with me and him. We always have had bumped heads in one way or the other for a long time when we were younger. And it just, by the time it started to spill over in music and stuff, that's what really made it more public and bigger than anything. But it's just always kind of been like that. But it's dead. And it's one of those type of deads where everybody's so much older now and in such a different place that I don't think any of us are interested in like reigniting anything, if that makes sense.
No, definitely, man. I definitely feel you. I just had no idea that it really started over you, to be honest with you, I-20.
Yeah, definitely.
So your second album was actually going to be called Blood in the Water.
Yeah, it was going to be called Blood in the Water. And then Politics of Rap. That's the politics of rap. Politics of rap. I was, Disturbing the Peace was done with dealing with Capitol. They wanted to sever all ties with Capitol. Capitol said, that's perfectly fine with us. We hate you guys, but we're taking 20. And DTP was like, no, he's one of our flagship artists. He stays with us. And they were like, no, he comes with us. And so I was stuck in my Capitol deal for 3 years, and I couldn't record. I couldn't put anything out. I just had to be frozen while they worked that out. So it took me about 3-4 years to get off of Capitol and then rap. Yeah. You cannot let that amount of time like go. Like if it was now, I could be stuck on a label and just stream a bunch of music and drop a bunch of stuff to YouTube and just kind of stay relevant and in the people's eyes. But at this time, the only real vehicle is the radio. The only real vehicle is, MTV, BET, or what have you. I wasn't allowed to do anything. Yeah, I was stuck on Capitol. So I just was in limbo for like 3.5 years.
And you wanted to go with Elektra in the first place.
I did. So I was super pissed because, A, their beef with Capitol was because of Chingy, not me. I didn't want to go there, number one. I wanted to go with Elektra where I wouldn't have had anything to do with this. Totally. And because they couldn't sort it out, that was pretty much the end of me.
Can we talk about UGK for a second?
Yeah, of course.
Can you remember how the record Stick 'Em Up with UGK came about?
Man, Chris, I forgot where he met Bun B. Luda used to work at the radio station. He met Bun B somewhere and got cool with him. And then this got further solidified. If you remember earlier, I was speaking about the fact that we were on this J Prince compilation for Rap A Lot. And UGK was on Rap A Lot at the time. And so J Prince gave it the blessing to be like, yeah, do a song with them. And Bun B did his verse first. And Pimp C was hesitant, as he's always hesitant to do anything outside of UGK. But once he heard Chris and Bun's verses, then he ended up liking the record and he ended up coming on later on. But I can't remember exactly how Chris initially connected with Bun, but I know J Prince really had a hand in making sure it came to light.
Did their relationship go further than that?
Yeah, I mean, Bun B was with us for the first 3 or 4 albums, just always with us and connected because, of course, he's really cool with Scarface, who was the president of Def Jam South for a while.
So was that whole Texas scene, was that big for Disturbing the Peace? Do you remember?
Definitely, because the Catch Up record was leaked there first. And so being big, we definitely got a lot of push in the Texas market, and so we were cool with a lot of Texas rappers.
You were featured on the song We Got with Ludacris, Chingy, and Titty Boy. I want to get into both of these artists in a second, you know, their history with the label. But what do you most remember about this song?
I could not believe he had gotten the beat from Juicy J. I mean, we are 36 Mafia stands for real. And the fact that he was able to get a beat from Juicy J was just incredible. And he was like, hey, come by the studio. I want you to hear some. When I got there, Titty or 2 Chainz, however you want to call him, was already there. And as soon as I heard the beat, I was like, I got to go first. I wrote my verse real quick, and I was like, I got to set this off. And I was just so excited to be rapping over a 36 Mafia beat.